Welcome to the MarTech Matrix, the podcast that cogently uncovers the business problems each tech company was built to solve. Today, Sean speaks with Obel Brown-West, president of Tracer, a data intelligence platform that revolutionizes modern data stack management by eliminating technical complexity. They will be discussing how Tracer empowers global brands, data partners, and agencies to make strategic decisions by seamlessly consolidating data sources and enriching it with business insights. After the show, head on over to themartechmatrix.com for show notes, contact information, and details on upcoming episodes. Now, get ready to enter the Matrix.
Obel, welcome into the Matrix. How are you today?
Thank you. I am doing well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm looking forward to this conversation because it's a continuation of the one that we started at Shop Talk, and I thought that was fascinating. Like I said, I wish we had recorded that because it was so it was such an interesting conversation. But in the intro, the description of Tracer was a data intelligence platform that revolutionizes modern data stack management by eliminating technical complexity. What does that mean in layman's terms? That's a lot of big words there. Please tell us.
I will tell you. So in layman's terms, we make it very easy to get to insights for the end business user. I think we are all, the marketing world, we are all living in a analysis by paralysis. There's a lot of data in a lot of different places right now, and we are just making it easy for you to actually understand what your data is trying to tell you.
Got it. So it's taking all of so specifically for marketing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's taking all of the reports that a marketer gets from all of their different channels and partners and brings it into one place and normalizes it so that you're comparing apples to apples.
Yeah, so yes, but I will correct you for a little bit. It's not just for marketing. That's the best thing about it, is that the platform is actually, it ingests all of your data. So my background obviously is coming from the marketing world. So I fell in love with Tracer because the use case it's a huge problem for marketers. But we are actually, some of our clients are ERP providers that are actually trying to get all of their data centralized and normalized. And so, yes, but it's not just for marketing. We're able to really take all data sets and make sense of it for any end user.
Okay. Now, I think I understand the problem. I haven't lived it, but when the founders started the company, was there a specific business problem that they were setting out to solve?
Yes. So the business problem so I think you probably saw on our old website, and it's also on our new website that we just launched as well. But the problem that they were trying to solve was that they were within VaynerMedia. Jeffrey Nicholson, he was the chief media officer at VaynerMedia, and Vayner's a large agency. He was trying to, at his fingertips, be able to aggregate and understand the data that was being provided to any given client at a moment's notice. There was nothing that existed in the market for him to wrap his arms around all of the data across clients, even the data sets within a client, in order for his team, the media team, to really execute quickly and precisely and to make decisions on behalf of the client. And so that is where Tracer became built from. Leighton Welch worked within the media team. He and Leighton, Jeff and Leighton got together, and that's where Tracer really evolved from. Tracer officially spun out of VaynerMedia in 2021 because they realized that it was such a huge problem that needed to be solved in the marketing world, but also outside of the marketing world. And so in 2021, I'm spun out. Gary is still an investor and on our board, but realized that the opportunity was so much greater than the walls of Vayner. And that is how the company exists today.
Big problems create big opportunities. So that's probably a wise decision. And when you talk about data, are we talking about marketing platform data or other types of data? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so it's for sure platform data. TikTok does not talk to X, does not talk, we call it X, right? We don't call it
Yeah.
anything anymore. Yeah. So TikTok does not talk to X, does not talk to Meta, does not talk to Trade Desk. Like they're all over the place, does not talk to Amazon. But the benefit, as I said, it's beyond marketing data. And so we're able to pull in point of sale data. We're able to pull in your Salesforce data. We're able to pull in what is happening within Criteo, our how we met years and years ago. So we're able to join it all together beyond just the platform data to really get to you the answers that you need for customer lifetime value, for understanding your mixed media model, for understanding and actioning on how Amazon is actually interacting with TikTok in real time, for AI enablement, the hot topic of AI. Can't use AI unless you actually have structured data, right? And you have to have a platform like Tracer to structure your data so you're able to actually get the AI to work. So it's beyond just the platforms. It's truly ingesting all of your data to help you make sense of what to do next if you're a marketer holistically.
That makes a lot of sense. But how does that work with like measurement and attribution vendors in the market that are trying to be that source of truth, where they're taking in platform, like e-commerce platform data, they're taking in the vendor data, and they're doing their own analysis with their own AI. How does that, something like that, compare to what you're doing? Is that a competitor? Is it complementary? Where does it sit?
Yeah, so definitely complementary. And there are actually a few partners that we are talking to in that same world, because the challenge that they have is still the unstructured data, right? So for them, they would move or the conversations we're having is that they will move significantly quicker if they have a platform like Tracer that they can have at the front end of their process that ingests everything, normalizes it for them, and then they're able to actually feed it into their models that will be able to then read out the attribution, the models, etc. And so definitely complementary, not competitive by any means.
Got it. So when you work with an agency or a brand and they're working with Tracer and they're working with a measurement and attribution company, what becomes their source of truth? Is there one? Are they looking at both? And they see all the data over here, but then they see the analysis over here, and maybe the data from Tracer is being fed into the attribution platform, and that creates the answer, so to speak. How do they look at it?
Yeah, they're still looking at both. And I think the way to think about Tracer is real time. So whenever you need the answer to your question, you're able to get that within Tracer within a couple clicks of a button, if you even need to click a button, right? If it's the same thing that you're looking for, you log in and it's there and it refreshes in real time. The attribution MMM side of things, those readouts aren't happening in real time, right? Those readouts are happening on maybe a monthly basis, quarterly basis, biannual, annual. So they're looking at both to understand what to do in real time to help impact business in real time. But then the attribution, the mixed media, those types of partnerships, they're looking at more at a holistic level, strategy level for future planning as well, as opposed to real-time insights. So they're still looking at both, but the source of truth tends to be on a day-to-day basis, Tracer.
Got it. Okay, so I didn't warn you about our rule here around using the word or the term AI. And you mentioned it. So, and I think you sort of described it, but I'm going to ask you to isolate it in this conversation.
Sure.
Where does Tracer's AI play a part? Tell us what the AI actually does. And I think I understand, you're taking the data from the marketing platforms as sort of the LLM, and then you're mining that. Anyway, I'll let you explain.
Yeah. So twofold. So Tracer has been around for 9 years. Of course, the technology has been developed, but we do have like machine learning enablement within Tracer, right? And so that, as far as Tracer is platformed, like think of the AI component of Tracer as that. Where Tracer really is a powerful tool in AI in general is that AI does not work unless you have the structured data. And the way that you get that is through Tracer. So what we're doing with a lot of our clients right now, of course, because it's inherent in what Tracer does, is we are actually helping them get everything organized so they can then use AI effectively. So for instance, I think maybe you've seen like some of the media that we had around the Super Bowl. Within the Super Bowl, we were actually able to use Google AI, Google Vision, et cetera, to do analysis for some of our clients on what was effective for the Super Bowl as far as advertising. We were able to take the data and we realized that the most effective Super Bowl spots were actually Super Bowl spots without celebrities. And we were able to actually get down to how many words were in the most effective Super Bowl campaigns as well. Like these are the types of things that we're able to do by taking Tracer to absorb all of the information, normalize it, and then feed it into AI so it can actually provide some of these analysis. We're doing a lot of that on the creative side of things with our clients.
Interesting. So I'm going to dig into that, even though it's not necessarily relevant. Yeah. So the most relevant commercials during the Super Bowl were ones without celebrities. So my hypothesis would be that the creatives, the agencies, didn't work as hard as they needed to because they were relying on the celebrity. Versus, hey, we don't have celebrities, so we better make the creative really strong and the text and all that. Is that a fair assessment, or are there others?
I don't want to get in trouble, but I would say I kind of agree with you. Yes, because I mean we all saw the Super Bowl spots this year, and yes, I don't know that the celebrities worked as hard as they needed to.
They're just not as good as they used to be.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah, like one or two. All right, let's talk about enterprise analytics a little bit. So over the years, brands have been adding more and more layers to their tech stack, right? From media partners to their CRM, billing, and so on. What kinds of challenges has that growth caused for brands?
I think it's kind of what we've been talking about. The biggest challenge is there's just so many data sources now. And they don't talk to each other. So that's really the biggest challenge is, what was it, like 10, 15 years ago, everyone was focused on building a modern data stack and getting all of their data centralized into one place and hiring a bunch of engineers and building out analytics teams to make sense of it. But as we continue to grow, TikTok didn't exist 4 years ago. Whatever happened to Clubhouse? Like, I think when everyone started building out all of their data lakes 10, 15 years ago, like the big things were still a lot of platforms that we don't even talk about today. There's constant evolution, there's constant change. And with that, there's constant growth of where the data is coming from, and it becomes very challenging to wrap your arms around it. I think that's the biggest challenge that brands have is that, yes, they built out these data lakes, they built out these warehouses of information, but there's so much going into it right now that they can't wrap their arms around it and they don't know what to do with it. Even if they have engineers and data teams, if you don't have the what am I trying to understand mapped out, like engineers and analytics teams, they're not going to be able to be as effective. And I think that's where everyone has, like I was saying, like analysis by paralysis. I think that's what the challenge is for most people today.
So what I'm trying to reconcile in my mind is, we said it's not just marketing folks, but we talked a lot about marketing. But if you have, if you're a brand or an agency and working on a specific client, a brand, and you have 5, 10 different marketing platforms, you have your your attribution platform, and then you also have your billing and accounting and other tech platforms that are spitting out data. Why does it all need to work together? Because it feels like some data is for some roles and some for the other. Like, where does just even the data sources I mentioned there, the marketing and the accounting, like where do they come together in the ecosystem?
Well, think of it this way, from a marketing accounting example. how do you actually, if you are an agency, or actually we'll say it from the client side, if you are a brand, how do you actually reconcile what your agency has been effective in doing in order to make sure that the bill that you're getting is the correct bill? You really have to make sure, like, what is the, in that sense, like, what is the central truth to actually check to make sure that what you're being asked to pay, your agency delivered on. So I think that's where having it all sit within one system is incredibly powerful, because you actually, for the first time, have like true checks and balances to see that if I had a deal to do this, or I signed a PO to do this, or an insertion order for this, did I actually get that? Without necessarily having to rely on just one central truth, which is your agency. You're able to actually understand, because you're having everything feed into one place, to reconcile and make sure that you're paying for what you think you're paying for. That is just one example that I would say is incredibly powerful, to make sure that like the ownership and is really back in the hands of the brands, instead of necessarily just having to rely on like what your agency is promising that they said that they would do. There's really more of like a check and balance.
That's fair. It seems like the use case might be a little bit different for an agency versus a brand. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
Take us through, it'd be nice to take us through both. An example of an agency. You don't tell us any brand names or agency names, but like take us through like a use case of maybe the challenge the agency or the brand came to you with, or Tracer with, and what you were able to do to help them address the challenge, and what maybe the outcome looked like.
Yeah, for sure. We actually have one new agency that just started with us. And the challenge that they had was that they had been working on standing up a modern data stack internally. They had been working on that for many years, and it was not yet stood up, but the agency was growing. They have a lot of amazing new clients, global clients that were coming in. And the challenge that they had was that because so much time had been spent on building against this modern data stack, that they weren't actually investing in the resources that were needed in order to actually just deliver to the clients. So they were struggling to answer for the clients just basic questions of, what has our investment gotten us to date? They didn't have reporting stand up. It took them incredibly long, months and months to stand up one dashboard for a client in order to get those answers. And of course, like as you're growing and you're getting these global clients, that you can't do that. They sign with you and they want to know exactly what's happening, and they weren't able to answer that. So they started working with us about 6 months ago. And we have cleaned all of that up for them, where most of their dashboards are now built. They continue to bring on new clients. They have not needed to hire any additional analytics engineering staff. They were actually able to save on some of that from an FTE perspective, as well as getting rid of some of the modern data stack pieces that they had been paying a ton of money for, but never really stood up. And that's only within 6 months of us working with them. We were able to really completely change the face of what they were dealing with. And the CEO texted me last night saying that he's been really excited and hearing good things, that the team is actually very pleased with everything that we've been able to enable them with. So that's on the agency side.
Yeah, let me ask about that one. So I have to imagine, Tom, I'm thinking about now from an agency perspective, if you're an agency and you have 10 clients, and they're advertising on, let's say, 5 platforms. Maybe there's multiple campaigns running on them. So maybe there's 10 campaigns across 5 platforms just in a month, right? Yep. That's like 50 different executions. And then, when you think about campaign by platform, and then times 10, right? So that's a lot of campaigns, a lot of different, it's a lot of different dashboards to log into. So when the agency sets up their relationship with Tracer, are you plugging into every single campaign, every single brand's accounts on those platforms, pulling it into one place. So now as an agency, I can log into one dashboard and I can see everything aggregated, normalized, and it's obviously more actionable. It's starting to come to me now.
That's correct. Exactly. It took us 30 minutes, and I finally
19 minutes and I got it. Okay.
But that's exactly right. Where the analytics teams have been so focused on being more so engineers of just trying to get the data together and normalized, that they weren't able to even get insights done. So what we've been able to help them do, and this is what we do for most of our agency clients, but with this client in particular, they've completely changed the face of what analytics is supposed to do. Analytics is always supposed to be insights driven, right? And having the data accessible so they would be able to get back to the client and say exactly what the insight is and what that means for optimizing and moving forward. They were spending so much time just trying to build and normalize and standardize, where they weren't actually even successful getting dashboards stood up because it wasn't really the skill set, and it was also very time consuming to get to bright on these things. So we've changed that for them in only a matter of months using the technology.
Yeah, I don't think the importance can be understated. I mean, I think if I was a brand working with an agency and I asked you questions about my campaigns and the insights, like, hey, I've been paying you for 6 months.
Yes.
Tell me something, like good, bad. What do we need to change? What's working? And you can't tell me anything. Yep. I'm not going to be a very happy client. I'm going to be out the door, and the work could be awesome, but I'm not going to know it.
That's right. You would never know because it was taking way too long. By the time you were getting the answers to the question that you were asking, it's irrelevant and stale because we've already moved forward, but you don't know that, right? So, So that's the agency example. On the brand side, one example that I'll provide is we actually have a household name. Most of our clients are household names, but we have this one as a household name that everyone's familiar with. And if you're a marketer, you'll probably know who I'm talking about. But they just went through 2 high-profile agency reviews. And there was nervousness about it, but then they remembered that they had Tracer. And the reason why there was nervousness about it was because the agencies were long-term agency partnerships that they had. The agencies, up until they started working with Tracer about a year ago, were the sources of truth. They owned all the data. We started working with them a year ago. Tracer became the centralized source of truth, gave the brand control over their data. So there was no longer any hesitation of doing the agency reviews and picking new agencies, which they did. The handoff from agency was seamless and we supported them with that. We were able to help onboard the agencies because we had all of the data centralized. We were able to give them the access and the overview of what we had been seeing historically. And so that made it very easy and controlled within the brand, where it was like a light switch, like one agency down, the next agency turns on, and you didn't have to worry about what normally happens in these situations where it's weeks, if not months of like transition, trying to find out like what happened with this campaign over here, who has this data, who owns that, what did this mean? Like you don't have to, that's irrelevant at this point because you have a platform like Tracer.
It's interesting because I always wondered why. I think it was Microsoft years ago. They switched I think they went from UM to Starcom. I think they went back to UM, but I remember I think it was Microsoft. And when they switched agencies, obviously all the people from the first agency got laid off, but then the new agency hired them all back. So they needed the intellectual intelligence. But I was like, what? It's the same agency then. It's just a different building. So I think it's just, this is a better solution because it's not about the people.
Exactly. Just like instead of it's the same people, but different paper for the contracts. Like you don't have to worry about that now. Yeah, exactly.
So I want to poke a little bit there with the agencies and the brand. So is it better? Maybe there's not an answer here, but is it better that the Tracer relationship you had with the brand or the agency? And if it's with the agency, does the brand have a right to all the information because they own it? It's their data, right? How does that? Just trying to think through, because I would imagine if you're an agency and your client's like, I'm leaving or I'm putting this up for a review, they're not going to be so keen to maybe make it easy for them or give them all their data because, they want to hold it hostage. Maybe they don't act like that. That's just.
Yeah, no, I mean, trust me, I came from the agency side. So yes, we would love to hold data hostage. We would love to make it painful for people to leave. But yeah, what's been interesting with Tracer, we've had it happen a couple times since I've been here for a year. We've had it happen a couple times since I've been here, but there have been brands who have left agencies, but they've stayed with Tracer because they know that the data was within Tracer and they loved the output speed, etc. What's interesting is both of those they went in-house. They didn't go to other agencies. So we became kind of their in-house solution as well. But yes, like I think we haven't seen it a ton, but since I've been here, it's happened a couple times.
So when you onboard a brand, how far back do you go with their marketing data? So if you're plugging in Meta, do you go back 2 years, 5 years, all of history? Like what are you able to capture?
Whatever they want. So the way that we talk to brands in particular is we want to understand why Tracer, right? Like what is it that you're trying to solve by having Tracer as your solution? And from there, we actually have an onboarding team that will help them design out what their Tracer experience needs to be in order to get to those answers. And of course, there's going to be other things that they're trying to solve for down the road, but we want to make sure that within the first 90 days of working with us, you're seeing we've changed your life entirely. So we want to really answer the hardest questions. And so that's how we start. And then everything else becomes easy. But the reason why we do that is because then that determines, based on what you're trying to answer, it determines how far back we need to go and what data we need to actually make sure that we're ingesting to the system. So there is no limit. Like we can go as far back as you need us to go. But part of the reason why Tracer was born is because of like the plethora of data that's out there that no one knows what to do with it. So we don't want to just ingest anything because then we're not really solving the problem. We want to ingest what's actually going to be useful and helping you get to your answer. So that could be as much historical data as you need, or if you're just trying to understand what happened last week, give us last week's data and we can get that going for you too.
It's faster, right?
Yeah, it's a lot
I'll
faster
take unnecessary.
Too.
Yeah,
exactly. But it all starts from what is it that you're trying to solve? And let's start there. And then we can figure out like how much data we need and where the data needs to come from.
I imagine some brands aren't exactly sure what they want to solve for. They just know that their data is everywhere.
Correct. And so, but they'll always have at least one or two things. And then once you solve that one or two, all of a sudden the floodgates open. It's like, can you do this? Can you help me with this? And of course we can. And the hard part is just getting to what are like the one or two things you want to solve. And then the floodgates open from there.
So speaking of the plethora of data that you see at Tracer, and you mentioned the Super Bowl analysis that you did, I imagine you see an incredible amount of data obviously it's proprietary, it belongs to the client, but in aggregate, what kinds of things can you do with that data? And how does it help the market? I'll give you an example of what I'm asking. So when I was at Criteo, obviously Criteo was doing retargeting and they had their pixels up on everybody's website and on their conversion page. Criteo had insights into 10,000 plus brands that were selling online. They knew how much revenue was being generated, say, over the holiday season from Black Friday to Christmas. They could put reports out to say, this is how much growth we saw in holiday shopping this year. Retail is up 15% or whatever, right? What kinds of reports does Tracer generate with that data?
Yeah, so it's proprietary. It's all of our clients' data. So we don't really do anything. Like everyone has their own ecosystem within the warehouse, but we are able to actually glean insights because yes, we do see a lot of similarities. So we have monthly benchmarking reports that we just started putting out across the different platforms. So we're able to actually see anomalies within different platform performance. a report. We've been spending a lot of time talking about TikTok, given all of the news around TikTok. What we actually saw when the first announcements of the Senate even, or the Congress even taking up the conversation, we saw a huge jump in people doubling down on TikTok.
Really?
And that was interesting to us. And so we put out like a mini report talking about that. But what's fascinating is, since the news has come out that everyone wants TikTok to divest from ByteDance, and ByteDance says, nope, we're not selling. We've actually seen some slump edge happening very, very fast and very quickly. But we've seen most of that slumpage going to Instagram and Reels. And so those are the types of things that we're able to see. We do snapshot views just based on what we're hearing in the market, like the TikTok example. But on a monthly basis, we're looking at benchmarking just so we can start to track the trends and inform not only our clients, but also, to your point, the market of how people are starting to look at different platforms.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, unrelated, do you guys know why people migrated to TikTok and then away from TikTok? We're talking about advertisers. So, or you're talking about advertisers or users?
We're talking about advertisers. Yeah.
Okay. So,
well, it's advertisers, but like the user interaction with their advertising, right? As far as like what we're seeing from a click-through perspective, impression perspective.
Is there a thought on why, and maybe it's in the data, on why advertisers gravitated toward it when Congress took it up, and why they went away when ByteDance said, no, we're not going to divest, which pretty much means they're going to get shut down? At least that's the hypothesis.
Not yet. Like, we're still trying to analyze the newest information. But when the insights that we pulled from when all of the noise started around it, it was demand. Users were using the platform. People saw the demand. People were investing in the demand. So the hypothesis that we had was that the users were just rallying around TikTok to try to make noise so Congress wouldn't take the actions that they took. And because of that, the advertisers were capturing the demand of that. And now, hypothesizing, because we haven't cleaned up all of the data yet, but I think people are like, oh crap, let me go ahead and dust off my Instagram.
Yeah, right.
Get that going. And
that's probably a fair assessment. Well, okay. So what's the long-term vision for Tracers? I mean, obviously you're solving a lot of big problems right now. Is there what's the growth look like?
Yeah. So long-term plan is what's interesting about Tracer is that we were born out of VaynerMedia. We spun out, but because we were born out of VaynerMedia, no one knew that Tracer existed until we spun out. They just thought it was a VaynerMedia solution. We spun out in 2021, as I mentioned, but really we didn't start like our real growth plan until our Series A closed this past August of 2023. And so the seed round went into making sure that we felt really good about the product. And it was all the investment went into the actual product of Tracer. The Series A is about our growth. And so right now we're really focused on making sure that we are professionalizing the business. And we just hired our first head of growth, who was the head of independent agencies from TikTok. Brought her on.
Probably a smart move for her.
A smart move for her. Very excited she's here. And we're just trying to make sure that the market knows that we exist and that we're here to solve the problem. So right now we're just really focused on our go-to-market strategy and our growth plan for the next 12 to 18 months of just continuing to grow and get in front of the market. And then from there, we'll see, but really focused on keeping our head down, building, executing the go-to-market so people know that we're a solution to their challenges.
Oh, it's a good answer. I don't like it when people are just like, oh, we're going to do this, this, and this. It's like, going to focus on what you do and do it
yeah,
right. I mean, that's how we work.
Focus on what we do it well, and the world changes too quickly anyway. So,
yeah. No, and that was our philosophy.
Yeah.
That was our philosophy at Criteo, and it worked out well. There was definitely people inside the company that were like, let's do this. And CEO was like, no, this is what we do. This is what we're going to keep doing. And, and then when he left, that people started to do different things. And then things aren't going as well as they were a long time ago. I mean, they're fine, but I'm just curious, how does an agency or a brand measure success, right? Like, so if they don't know what they don't know when they come in, right? They just know that their data is everywhere and it's a pain for them to get access to it and read it. Is it subjective, their KPIs, or do they have specific KPIs, or do you help them set the KPIs?
So we don't help them set the KPIs necessarily, but going back to what I said, we're really focused on what is it, why Tracer? Like, what is it that we're helping you solve? Because we want to make sure that they're clear in what success looks like for them, right? And using Tracer. So I think success, it varies by client, but I think some of the key things that we see is that they're definitely looking for speed. So if we're able to actually help them speed up what were lengthy processes to insights, then they're happy. In some regards, they're looking for FTE savings, where are we able to actually help them, not from like getting rid of team members, but are we able to help them optimize what their team members are doing? So like I mentioned with that one example from the agency, the insights or the analytics and insights team, they weren't able to do that because they were so focused on just trying to build out SQL queries and massage data and all like things that were not actually related to insights. Like, have we helped them actually transition back into what their work was supposed to do? So they're being more responsible with the FTEs that they have. Those two are probably like the big ones that we see, like speed to insight and just making sure that the resources you have are more optimized. Like, that's where we see a lot of like the ROI measurement of Tracer.
Yeah,
but every client's a little bit different.
No, that makes total sense. I mean, and you really don't need a way, you don't need to point to anything quantitative like a KPI in terms of like revenue, because no one's ever going to unplug Tracer once they're plugged in, right? Because it's like we can't go back to that. We can't go back to that world where we have to do everything manually. No, please don't take it away. Makes total sense. How does somebody get started? Is it an easy process? Is it quick?
Yeah, it's easy and quick. Call me. I'll talk to you. But yeah, it's pretty easy. We've had some clients that are set up if they know specifically what they want, what they're trying to achieve. We're able to stand it up in as little as 3 days.
Wow.
It's relatively easy to get started. The hard part is getting them to as I mentioned, getting them to why Tracer, what is it that you're trying to solve? That's the hardest part. And then from there, we have our onboarding team that comes in, they architect out, okay, if this is what you're trying to solve, here's what we need from you. Give us the access to what we need. Assuming they're able to do that quickly, it could take as little as 3 days. Most times on average, it takes about 30 to get up and running. But as I mentioned before, like by 90 days, we want to completely make sure that we've already changed your world. So,
okay.
So yeah.
And so it's just a matter of plugging into their different platforms, whatever they might be.
Plugging into their data sources. Even if there isn't a plug to the data source, let us know where, if it's a spreadsheet that you have in Google Sheets, let us know where to go pick up that data. We're happy to go do that. It's just giving us the access, wherever it may be, to the data that you have and telling us what answers you want to solve from that data. And then the rest is easy for us.
So if someone's thinking about calling you,
yes,
what should they be thinking about in terms of, when you look back at customers over the last couple of years, are there any mistakes that people make when onboarding, a pitfall, right, that can be avoided if they just think about something, in the earlier stages?
Yeah, I think I think the pitfall is that they Well, two things. The pitfall is that they don't have control of their data, which sometimes a lot of times that's not necessarily on them, right? The data just lives in different places. So just knowing where your data is, I think is before you call, like, where is your data? Like doing the due diligence of knowing where it lives is helpful. But then it's the piece of and it could be a list of 3 things. It could be a list of like 100 things. What is it that you want us to solve for you? And prioritizing that, because we can do a lot of different things, but just like having the priority order of like, these are like the top things that I'm really trying to solve for. And then we can just start working and chipping away from there.
Okay.
I think that's basically it. But we're easy. We're scrappy. It's okay.
Yeah, it sounds like everyone has this problem, right? So if you're a brand, you're an agency, you likely have this problem. You're wasting a lot of money on time and resources, not to mention that time that it takes you to get the truth is money you're wasting for yourself or for your clients, and the resources you're spending to get the data out and optimization. So it doesn't sound like it should take too much thought to make a decision to work with Tracer.
I don't think it should either. Thank you, Sean, for saying that and not having me having to say it myself. I agree with you.
Well, let's leave it there because I think that's a great way to end the show. Abel, thank you so much for being in the Matrix today. It's been a lot of fun, and you're welcome back anytime. Maybe next time with that agency client or brand, talk about how you change their world.
I would love to do that. And did you notice how I wore all black to actually pretend I was in the Matrix? Did you see that? No?
That's 2 episodes in a row where I got Matrix comments. Last time it was the red pill, blue pill. I know. Yeah. Maybe I should go back and watch the movie. It's been too many years.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks again. Take care. Bye.
You too.
This episode of the MarTech Matrix was brought to you by the Cogent Collective, a community of marketing and e-commerce leaders. Learn more at cogentcollective.com. For show notes and information on upcoming episodes, head on over to the martechmatrix.com. If you would like to learn more about the companies appearing on this podcast and see if they're a good fit for your company, send Sean a note at sean@cogentcollective.com. New episodes of the MarTech Matrix podcast will drop every Monday, so be sure to subscribe with your favorite podcast network so you can stay on top of what's happening in the Matrix.